Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Oh boy, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. If FNaF 1 was a YouTube sensation back when it came out, FNaF 2 was the game that I feel cemented the series as much more than just a fad for YouTubers to cover and forget about in a month. It was with this game that Five Nights at Freddy's would gain its massive following. With this game that the theorist community would reach the absurdity that it is today. And with this game that fan creations and works would explode across every social media platform. If FNaF 1 was lightning in a bottle, FNaF 2 was Scott capitalizing on what he had with that original game and using it to create the franchise we know and love today. I remember the wait for this game like it was yesterday. At the time, many creators had quickly become aware of the existence of the old site Scott used to post teasers for upcoming projects, scottgames.com, and it was through that site that we learned a sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's was on the horizon. Naturally, with the sudden boom of popularity that was seen from the first game, many new content creators would appear who attempted to capitalize on the hype for this new game by posting about these teasers, trying to cash in on the hype before anyone else could, giving us our first ever wave of FNaF tubers that would hit the YouTube scene. It was through these videos that I would learn about Scott Games myself, and the next thing you know, these channels became the gospel to me. I remember watching videos from specifically the channel Pro Class Gamer covering every teaser, wondering what the hell FNaF 2 was going to be. In the first three teasers we got, featuring Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy respectively, Scott was able to capture the community's intrigue by showing off what seemed to be the original characters in a state of disrepair. Freddy was shown in the first teaser with rips and tears along his body. Bonnie was shown literally missing his entire face with a new plastic version of him at his side, and good old Foxy was shown with another new version of him present. Everyone began to speculate what these teasers meant, with it being believed that this new game would take place at a brand new location following Freddy's closing in the first game, with the original characters taking a back seat to whatever these brand new plastic animatronics were. Things would get even crazier though with the next few teasers, which both tease new mechanics as well as us seeing what looked to be a brand new character. An image of a mask with Foxy looming in the distance, visible from one of the mask's sockets, as well as an image teasing what looked to be a new camera with some kind of emergency symbol, and a disturbing new character looming in the darkness. I remember clear as day how the community reacted to these teasers, with the Foxy one specifically sparking much discussion about whether or not the game would be free roam, a funny thought in hindsight, considering the teaser quite literally tells you that you can't move, but you know, whatever. FNaF fans didn't read back then either. The hype for this game would reach its peak when on October 21st, the trailer for FNaF 2 would come out, and with it, a million questions would be asked by the community. We got to see glimpses of this game and its characters, the old withered versions of the animatronics roaming a gigantic new building, the brand new plastic versions of them seemingly being a new threat as well, the phone guy for some reason still being alive. There was just so much to unpack that it felt like the entire community for a month experienced mass psychosis. Like, we had theories about the reversed London Bridge being sung in the opening, actually saying Mike Kill All, alluding to him being the killer of the children mentioned in the FNaF 1 newspaper clippings. We had people believing Foxy was screaming freedom when he jumped the player at the end of the trailer. And of course, we had many people theorizing that the phone guy managed to fake his death after FNaF 1 because of him being present in the trailer. If you think FNaF theories are crazy now, you should have been there 11 years ago, because we were all just making shit up back then. I bring all this up not only to contextualize what the wait for this game was like for me back then, but to really hone in on something I believe was really important to FNaF and all of the Click Team era games. These teasers and trailers, in their own special way, were what made the waits for these games so exciting. There was this really nice feeling feeling of just waking up every morning and refreshing scottgames.com, wondering if maybe, just maybe, something new would be posted that day that would make the entire community lose their shit for a bit. With every teaser, there would be a million videos ripping them apart, trying to analyze every pixel to find something people may have missed. And honestly, if I can be real with y'all for a sec, that has to be the thing I miss the most about those old games. With newer FNaF titles, that excitement really isn't there anymore because it feels like not much is really done to generate that hype. Recent games especially just feel like they're not marketed, and it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just stuck in the past because I grew up with this stuff, but it gave me something to look forward to every day, and now it just feels like we might get a small gameplay trailer every couple of months, if at all, for new releases, and that's really it. Like, the one example I can think of recently of us getting a Scott-style teaser was with Secret of the Mimic, where we got these Twitter images you could brighten to see stuff going on, but like, these teasers were given to us the week before the game dropped, after months of radio silence, and the only other marketing for the game being a short trailer and a gameplay demo that was kept secret from the public. Like, this game had nothing to hype people up at all. FNaF teasers used to have a life of their own, leading to so much theorizing and speculation, and now it just kind of feels like that's gone. And anyways, tangent aside, to say that this was an exciting point in my life would be the understatement of the decade. With all the contagious hype buzzing around for this game, it felt like a second Christmas for me. What in hindsight was a very short wait of only a couple months felt like an eternity, but on November 10th, 2014, FNaF 2 would release, and with it, Five Nights at Freddy's would completely change forever. The game absolutely lived up to the hype, with it feeling pretty unanimous at the time that this game was just as good, if not better, than the original. The fandom soared to new heights, fan creations for it became the norm, and next thing you know, Five Nights at Freddy's was somehow an even bigger success than what the first game had managed to achieve. So, with all that said, the question now is how? How did Scott manage to live up to the absurd expectations set by the previous title? How did this game turn the series from a cool, one-off horror game to a beloved franchise with more sequels than you can count? That was the question that I wanted to answer. Oh, silly me, sorry. I always forget that I leave my camera on whenever I choose to drink my GamerSupps lean flavor that I got over at gamersupps.gg using code PASTRA, which you can use to get 10% off your next order. When revisiting this game for the first time in 4 years, that was the question I wanted to answer. If my first video was about figuring out how FNaF still manages to work all this time later, with FNaF 2, I want to figure out how it managed to maintain that momentum and continue the hype the series had begun to build. So, without further ado, let's explore FNaF's first and most iconic sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So, immediately upon replaying FNaF 2, I noticed what Scott's idea for this game was and how he intended to expand upon what was there with FNaF 1. His solution was to give us more. More of everything. More animatronics, more mechanics, more doors, more cameras, more lore, more Easter eggs. The list goes on and on. FNaF 2 is a game all about taking what was there in FNaF 1 and dialing it up to 11. Quite literally, actually, there are exactly 11 threats that try to kill you in this game. If FNaF 1 was an isolating, vulnerable experience where the player had to watch as each threat slowly made their way to the office, FNaF 2 is a chaotic nightmare from start to finish where it feels like you have no time to do anything and there is always someone waiting to strike. This is accomplished both because of the aforementioned 11 animatronics present, as well as the fact that this game has multiple mechanics rather than just the doors, with each one demanding your full attention and clashing with the others. You have your Freddy Fazbear mask as the main mechanic, something that Scott added to this game, funnily enough, because of many players questioning why we didn't just wear one in the first game, the flashlight used on Foxy, and the music box that needs to be constantly wound up. Mix these mechanics with the fact that there are 3 entrances to your office and no doors to stop anyone, and you can quickly understand the point I am making. Just taking one look at early Let's Plays, you can just see how much more stressful FNaF 2 was for your average player. People just did not know what to do half the time, even with their experience from FNaF 1. I mean, look at Markiplier's Let's Play. He spent an entire episode not knowing he needed to put the mask on in front of the withered animatronics just because so much was happening, he didn't even know how to process it. But of course, like I said in my previous video, a lot of this initial stress and horror came from a time when the community didn't know what they were up against. People didn't know the mechanics, they didn't know how every character interacted with each other. This stuff was a mystery, and that added a lot to the reactions we would see from people at the time, and in my opinion, that lended a lot to the perception this game gave a lot of people. This was most people's first game in the series, and with how YouTubers reacted to it, it made a lot of people remember it extremely well. So with all that said, how does it hold up now? Now that this game has been picked apart completely. Just like I did with the FNaF 1 video, I want to talk about the plot of this game first, because I feel that was something that stood out right away about this game, and I have way more to say about it this time. FNaF 2 has us working as a security guard at the newly reopened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. We play as a dude named Jeremy Fitzgerald who works the night shift there and has to deal with a whole new cast of animatronics. The old Faz gang from the first game have been reduced to scrap, now being completely withered and left in an old parts and service room in favor of a new cast of characters, the toy animatronics, who are their super kid-friendly replacements. These toy animatronics are explained to be special, not only for their more advanced designs, but also for the fact that they have been designed with a facial recognition system that is connected to a criminal database. Ever since the events of FNaF 1, Fazbear Entertainment is seemingly very paranoid about anything like the missing children's incident ever happening again, and has made the robots as a precaution. We get a phone call each night from Ralph, an employee who... Wait, no, something's wrong. That wasn't just a trailer thing. He's actually just still alive. Oh, and we're just glossing over it because he's talking about the Wizards now. Okay, cool. Anyways, Ralph, who I guess faked his death or something, tells us about the old location and how the previous night guard complained about animatronics trying to get into his office. So the company decided both to give us an empty Freddy Fazbear head to fool the animatronics, as well as a music box that is meant to calm down a specific one. It's here we are introduced to a new character, the puppet, who from the moment they're mentioned is set up to be different from the others. It isn't a robot, but rather a marionette, and despite that, it can still move and attack like anyone else can. It even disturbs poor Ralph, who describes it as
always thinking
and having the ability to
go anywhere.
Anyways, the nights go by as one would expect, with us fending off the characters, and as the week goes by, we hear Ralph tell us about the goings-on at the restaurant during the day. Strange things begin to happen at the new Freddy's, mainly relating to the toy animatronics. A day shift security guard was stationed there 24/7 to ensure the safety of the children at the establishment. A day shift security guard who seemingly tampered with the animatronics between his shifts, causing them to malfunction and become unstable. During the day, the toy characters begin to act strangely towards adults, staring in their direction blankly and showing signs of instability. Following this, police would begin a full-scale investigation of the new Freddy's, leading to the building being closed down indefinitely. The only event left would be a birthday party that Jeremy would attend as a security guard to ensure nothing would go wrong, and Ralph suggests that when the place reopens, he'll take on the night shift himself? Wait, but that doesn't make sense. This reads like it takes place in the past, but it can't be, right? This is a sequel. How could this possibly... Oh. So yeah, FNaF 2 was a prequel the entire time and took place the same year as the Bite of 87, which, once again, I know that everyone knows this. I know that this is like one of the most well-known twists in the series, but it's important to frame it as if you didn't know to me, because I need you to, just for a moment, put yourself in the boots of someone who experienced this game blind. Back when the first game released, the lore was still so fresh and new on everyone's minds. And then this game comes around, the second game in the entire series, and right off the bat, right when Scott got the opportunity to expand the lore, he threw a curveball at the community, frame one, that made everyone lose their shit because it left us trying to figure out what it all meant. If this game is a prequel, what does that mean about the previous Freddy's location that came before this one? Who was this mysterious day shift guard we heard about? Did the murders take place here or in the previous Freddy's? Which one of these characters did the Bite of 87? This one singular reveal caused a massive fucking explosion in the theorist community, with everyone trying to make sense of this brand new and already convoluted timeline of events. And it did not stop there, because remember that phone call I mentioned, the one where Jeremy got moved to day shift? Yeah, well, that phone call also mentioned something else that shook the community to its core. The mention of a yellow suit that someone had used. A spare suit that nobody should have been wearing. And on that same night it gets mentioned, night 6, Golden Freddy appears again as an actual threat. This, as well as the aforementioned twist, was just, okay, you get it. The reveals in this game were absurd and everyone lost their shit. For me to continue going on, I'd just be reiterating the same point over and over and over. People continued to find more after this, because just like FNaF 1, there were details hidden in FNaF 2 that could only be found through Easter eggs, and these Easter eggs would become so iconic, so important to the core identity of the series, that they would be featured in every game to follow it, and most fan games that would release after as well. I am, of course, referring to FNaF 2's death minigames. You see, rarely when dying in this game, which would happen a lot, there was a chance that rather than just going to game over, the player would be greeted to this bizarre static on screen that would transition into an Atari-style minigame. These minigames would always start out innocent enough, but playing them for long enough revealed morbid secrets about the ever-expanding lore of this game. Things start out with information we already knew in the Foxy Go 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 minigame that would reveal to us the murder of the 5 missing children mentioned in the first game. Quickly after this, though, we would begin to find new information that gave a horrifying context to the events that transpired throughout the nights. Take Cake to the Children shows us a separate 6th murder that took place at an old location, when a child locked outside of a Freddy's establishment was murdered while trying to get in. A child who was heavily implied and later confirmed to be the one possessing the puppet. Speaking of the puppet, we get another minigame that explains this thing's lore and why it's so important to FNaF 2. Give Gifts, Give Life, where we see the puppet, now possessed, finding the 5 murdered children and stuffing them into the suits of the animatronics to make them possessed. We also learned here that Golden Freddy was indeed the 5th missing child, confirming a theory from the previous game. Finally, these minigames end with Help Them, Save Them, a minigame that shows the puppets seemingly waking up the old, withered Freddy and attempting to warn him of what's to come, with the killer returning to the location, potentially seeking to kill more children. Between most of these minigames, as well as them giving us their own individual lore, there is a shared character between them. Someone who's always there, always lurking. A purple humanoid sprite that is used as a stand-in for the killer responsible for each and every one of these murders. For years, these sprites would be all we had to go off for the identity of this killer. He had no name, no personality, nothing. Just a strange, mysterious sprite seen lurking in the dark, smiling as it takes the lives of the innocent. I know this section has kind of just been me recapping shit we've known for a decade, but seriously, with every reveal this game threw at us, we began to realize just how much there was to Five Nights at Freddy's worth talking about. Theorizing for FNaF 1 was more so just for the fun of it, you know? The game had its mysteries, but the most important details were pretty set in stone. With this game, though, it felt like a conscious effort was made to tell a proper story, to establish a timeline of events, to give us characters, and to elaborate on the spooky ghost story that was the first game. It felt like there was an actual puzzle we were meant to solve with this game, and without any books or movies or other external media to confirm or deny our theories, all we had to work with was our own interpretations of these vague minigames and phone calls. And that's not even mentioning the other random small details that gave us more lore to chew on than we knew what to do with. Random props like the paper pals moving about, a set of shadow animatronics that could spawn in different locations of the building, a recolored BB appearing under your desk, an endoskeleton just appearing on the cams and moving towards you, and of course, the cutscenes between nights that straight up confirmed that the puppet was somehow present in FNaF 1. Basically, everything about the Click Team era that people cared about narratively got its start with this game. FNaF 2 was just that important to the lore of the series, and honestly, I will forever love this game's specific era in the fan base, because like, when this game was the newest edition, yeah, the story was already convoluted, but like, in a fun way, you know? The story still felt tangible. You could process most of what was going on while still being able to form your own opinions about the more vague and mysterious story beats. I think it was just a simpler time for theorizing, and it never became frustrating like we will discuss when we get to later games in the series. I love FNaF 2 narratively, and I always will. This game is awesome for its story. But, you know, lore can only carry a game so much, no matter how cool the lore is. Sure, FNaF 2 explored things way better than FNaF 1, but what about its delivery as an actual game? How much does FNaF 2 hold up as a horror game and a horror experience? Well, let's start with the part of the game that will be most noticeable to most who play it, and the reason why I imagine this game is as beloved as it is by the fan base. Its art direction and presentation. FNaF 2, while still having the same art style as the original game, takes things in a whole new direction. This is a brand new Freddy's in its prime, not some small abandoned building, and it shows both in your office and on every camera. Gone is the claustrophobic, eerie office from before. It has now been replaced by an enormous new office complete with open vents to the sides and one gigantic hallway in front of you. Let me just say right off the bat that this hallway in front of you is maybe one of the coolest things that Scott could have done for a FNaF office. I have always fucking adored this hall purely for the novelty of just shining your light into it sporadically through the night, never knowing who will be there, and just seeing any number of characters standing off in the distance as they either come closer to come through it or to make their way to the other party rooms. It plays so well into the chaos this game attempts to create, with there being so many characters that sometimes you'll even see them overlapping in the hall as they all take turns trying to get to you. Outside of the office as well, I just love these camera renders. While FNAF 1's cameras took advantage of the eeriness of looking around the old rundown building, FNAF 2 sells the polish of this new building by just having all the renders feel so much more alive. You have these giant party rooms and long stretching halls where you could sometimes see several characters just stacking up at once. It's just so cool to me. I also love how with the new flashlight mechanic, you get these brief moments where you can just see an animatronic silhouette in whatever room you're looking at, only being able to tell which one it is once you illuminate them. It's awesome and gives the game an extremely distinct vibe that is far disconnected from its original counterpart. And speaking of the new animatronics in this game, oh my god, these animatronics. I genuinely, truly want to know what kind of shit Scott was on when he made these designs because I desperately want some. FNAF 2 somehow manages to deliver a 10 out of 10 character design for quite literally every single character in this game. It has more than double the roster of FNAF 1, and yet somehow I think these are the best designs Scott has ever made for the series. Starting things out, you have the toys, who are animatronics that had quite a lot to live up to. FNAF is a series that is well known for most of its characters being unique spins and variations of the original 4 animatronics, and I've always seen that as one of the series' biggest charms. I love how with every entry we see how those original base designs can be twisted and changed to fit the style and theming of whatever new environment they're put into, and the toys being the very first time this was done, it was very important these guys would land, and oh my god, do they ever. These guys are so distinct from their FNAF 1 counterparts, they may as well be completely original characters. Each one of them is very cutesy by design with some kind of unique visual quirk that still allows them to be unnerving in the environment they're put in. Toy Freddy losing his eyes when he enters the office, Toy Bonnie's overly cutesy appearance and dilating pupils, Toy Chica just straight up ripping off a piece of her face, and Mangle just... I mean, look at that thing. Do I really need to elaborate? If FNAF 1's characters were scary because they felt like rotting carcasses moving around, these guys are scary in the same way a haunted doll would be. And speaking of those original animatronics, oh my goodness, the withered animatronics are just peak in every way. Scott somehow managed to take the already iconic designs of the classics and mutilate them until they were perhaps the most beloved versions of these characters to ever exist. Withered Freddy and his blockier proportions, Withered Bonnie and his missing face, Withered Chica and her unhinged jaw and permanent glare. They're just, oh my god, these guys are awesome. And it doesn't even stop there, because we got newcomers in this game that are also awesome designs. Balloon Boy, while not being super creepy or badass, is such a goofy, fun character he'd become a staple to the series. And the puppet! The puppet is easily one of Scott's most iconic creations to me, because even in the context of the game it's in, this thing stands out. A thin marionette puppet that somehow moves around like the rest is a cool concept that's executed perfectly. I love these characters and feel like they give FNAF 2 so much life, which is very important seeing as the sheer number of them really is the big focus of this game. Scott needed to make very distinct designs that would stand out on the cameras even when they were all clustered up next to each other, and he succeeded very well at that. Just as a whole, FNAF 2 may have my favorite presentation in the whole series. The industrial vibe of the building mixed with the crazy contrast in its animatronics is a style that I feel would become the most iconic look in the entire series outside of the original. So much so that when I think of Five Nights at Freddy's, I usually think of 2 first. So, with all that high praise given, how does the actual gameplay of FNAF 2 stack up alongside its very strong story and presentation? Well, I'm gonna be so completely honest with you guys. Not well. Yeah, this is the part of the video where you're going to see a very dramatic shift in my opinions, because while I believe that FNAF 2 is damn near perfect in terms of its presentation and story, The actual gameplay of this game is some of the worst in the whole series. I tried to like it. I really, really did, because I adore everything else about FNaF 2 so much, but I just can't get behind the insane, glaring issues I noticed upon my revisiting of it. To convey why I feel this way, I want to just quickly break down what FNaF 2 tries to do with each of its mechanics, and how each of these ideas, while fine on paper, are extremely flawed in their execution. First things first, the mask mechanic. As I said earlier, the mask is your main line of defense against the majority of the animatronics in this game. Someone shows up at your vent or in your office, you put the mask on, and they leave. It's an incredibly useful tool that you always have, and it works on the majority of the cast. Fine idea on paper, right? Yeah, I do like it, but in actual execution, this mechanic is extremely boring because almost every single character in the entire game interacts with it the exact same way. Yeah, you know all these cool-ass animatronics that I spent the latter half of this video praising as the best design Scott ever made? Yeah, well, all of these awesome characters are basically reskins of each other that are functionally the exact same. Out of this roster of 11 animatronics, 8 of them are fooled by the mask, with these 8 characters functioning in 2 different groups. There's your vent animatronics, who appear with the vent light and leave when the mask is on, and the office animatronics, who abruptly show up, force down your camera, and then leave when the mask is on. There is little to no variation with these characters, with specifically the office animatronics quite literally being reskins of each other that just do the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. This right off the bat is my biggest issue with the gameplay design of FNaF 2. You have so many extremely unique characters, some of which had very special mechanics in the previous title, and instead of any of them having nuance or variety to their behavior, they are just copy and pasted across the game. The mask is a cool concept, but what I feel it lacks is any real complexity due to how samey the roster is, as well as the fact that there's no real limit to how much it can be used. Back in FNaF 1, the doors worked despite being a universal tool for safety because they were directly tied to your power. Everything used up power, so using the doors to protect yourself came with a very real risk of death. The mask lacks this resource management aspect to it. The only resource you can waste in this game and lose permanently is your flashlight, which is only really useful for dealing with a single animatronic in the entire roster, because the only other mechanic that takes advantage of it is irrelevant due to how inconsequential it is when one of these guys gets to your office. Because yeah, for those of you who did not know this, the flashlight actually can be used on every animatronic in the game. That random tip phone guy gives you about holding animatronics on camera with the flashlight, yeah, that actually does work. Finding a character on camera and flashing them with the light will hold them there for about 6 seconds before they can move again. And this mechanic just confuses me because it feels so antithetical to everything else going on in this game. I have only ever seen this mechanic actually get used in very specific max mode strategies. Aside from that, you have no reason to use this, because the mask is infinite in its uses. A character getting to your office means nothing for you other than a little bit of your time being wasted. There are so many characters in this game that taking the time to try and track them down on most nights just means the others will eventually get to your office anyway. And on top of all that, all those reasons why this mechanic just does not function within the gameplay loop of FNaF 2, there's also this goddamn music box. This music box, this fucking music box, is perhaps the single worst mechanic that has ever been thought up for any of these games, and I say that with full chest. This mechanic feels like it exists solely because Scott knew that the already existing camera mechanic was completely useless, and rather than reworking the game from the ground up, he thought it was a better idea to include this as a band-aid fix. For those of you who don't know about this mechanic yet, it was something I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video. The puppet is situated on the prize corner and will attempt to escape its gift box to kill the player regardless of if they're wearing the mask. The only way to stall them is to wind this music box on the same camera, which slowly ticks down when it's left alone. I hate this mechanic so much because it feels like its mere existence undermines the entire gameplay philosophy of Five Nights at Freddy's. These early games are all about looking for the animatronics on the cameras and watching them move towards you, and yet, here we have a mechanic that demands your full attention to the point that you have quite literally no reason to do anything on the cameras other than staring at this one spot and holding down a single button. Anytime you use looking for animatronics and stunning them with the flashlight is time you were actively wasting, not only because that flashlight mechanic gives you no real benefit, but also because the time you spend doing that is time you could be winding the music box, time you will continue to waste, as a million characters arrive at your office anyways and force down your camera. Time you will waste because you have to wait a million years for those characters to leave, and time you will waste even more because it is very likely that the fucking second you lift that monitor again to make up for all of the time you've already lost, someone else will immediately show up after to stall it out more. In this game that is all about chaos and dealing with a million threats at once, Scott decided to include a mechanic that is slow, tedious, and requires your full time and attention at all times. So instead of the desired gameplay loop of constantly trying to find and slow down these different threats, it instead boils down to holding down a button until the game decides you can't do that anymore and waiting for whoever interrupted you to leave. The only threats that feel like they are actually capable of killing you most of the time are the Puppet and Foxy, the latter of the two who also feels like a band-aid fix mechanic because Scott realized the flashlight didn't do enough in the gameplay loop. Every other character in this game feels like a glorified time waster, someone who just shows up to stall the shit out of your game so that stupid music box can wind down while you're completely powerless to do anything about it. With most characters, it can take up to a maximum of 5 seconds before they finally fuck off, which is bad enough. But on top of all that, there's an elephant in the room. A character who embodies this obnoxious design philosophy to a T. A character who has pissed me off so much on all of my runs of the hardest nights that he deserves some spotlight for a bit. Toy Bonnie.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Hello everyone, please hold your applauses. It's me, longtime Pastra character, editor of this video, and Toy Bonnie fan numero uno, Bonzi. I couldn't help but notice that Zach's doing a really bad job at explaining why Toy Bonnie is such a great character. So I figured I'd put some accompanying visuals that set you guys on the right path. Huh? Okay, bye.
This stupid little blue rabbit. This motherfucker is the most obnoxious piece of shit in this entire game. But Pastra, isn't he just a vent character like the others? No, he is not, dear viewer. Truth be told, when I explained the core mechanics of the 8 mask animatronics to you, I was not entirely honest about Toy Bonnie specifically. Toy Bonnie is fooled by the mask like the others, but rather than functioning like a vent animatronic or an office animatronic, this stupid little fence sitter decided he wanted to do both. Toy Bonnie will appear in your right vent like the other vent animatronics can, but rather than leaving after 5 seconds at the longest with the mask on, he will instead sit there for a random amount of time, come out of the vent, and then just start a blackout sequence like he's one of the office animatronics. What this means is you have to waste time waiting for him to come out of the vent and then waste time watching his long ass animation after he finally leaves it. And all of this happens while that stupid stupid music box is ticking down. It is the most obnoxious mechanic in the entire game because it truly does feel like you need to constantly be playing in anticipation of Toy Bonnie's arrival. If he catches you at a bad time, even once, it is game over and it is the most frustrating experience in the entire game because it will often make you feel like your deaths are completely out of your own control unless you play with surgical precision. And that is just my big problem with FNaF 2. Nothing in this game really works with anything else. The entire game is built around a single mechanic that is so extremely safe that Scott had to include multiple band-aid fix mechanics to make it so you weren't being handed your wins for free. Nothing really feels fully fleshed out, and the only animatronics that mechanically stand out to me are the ones that frustrate me the most. And it sucks, because I feel like there is so much potential here for a really good game. Having these three core mechanics that clash with one another by design is a fun idea for a horror game because it can be really stressful. Hell, in the past, I praised FNaF 2 for this gameplay loop because I had been so compelled by the idea of it rather than the execution. It's just the way FNaF 2 pulls it off makes everything feel so undercooked. The flashlight is barely a thing outside of Foxy. The mask is used the same way every night with no consequence, and the cameras are not cameras at all. They are the music box mechanic. This whole discussion really puts FNaF 2 in a strange place for me. On one hand, it feels like it does everything right that a FNaF game can do right until you actually look into the mechanics. The art direction, the animatronics, the lore, all of it is peak FNaF, so long as you aren't actually playing the game. For this reason, my feelings on it are so conflicted. It makes me so frustrated, but it only does because I love this game so much. Which is why FNaF 2 is going to go in B tier. Now, okay, this was a hard thing to really figure out for me because, you know, you can really draw a fine line between the parts of FNaF 2 that I absolutely adore and the parts of FNaF 2 that I really, really don't like. The gameplay pisses me off a lot. I think it's super undercooked. I think the mechanics are very poorly thought out. I just think it's a very messy game. However, this game was such a big deal to me whenever it came out. It has my favorite animatronics, probably in the entire series. It has some fantastic lore. It just has a lot of good memories tied to it, and I just love the way the game looks and the way it presents itself. So, you know, while it pisses me off and while the gameplay is weak, it's just there's so much that goes into it that I like that I can't reasonably see it going in like C or D tier, because I feel like I imagine those tiers are for games I don't have as much passion for and games that I don't fuck with as much, and I still do really fuck with FNaF 2, despite how flawed it is, so that feels like an appropriate placement to me. Let's take a look at the next tier list. All right, here we are with the animatronics tier list now. We've got a lot more characters to rank this time with FNaF 2 than we did with FNaF 1. So let's get right into it with Toy Freddy. I think Toy Freddy is pretty damn solid as far as Freddy variants are concerned, but like, I feel like compared to the rest of the cast of this game, he doesn't really stand out as much of the others, so I'm gonna put him in a solid B tier. Toy Bonnie, I mean, like, you watched the rest of this video. I mean, he's gotta go in F tier. That mechanic drives me absolutely insane. I cannot deal with it, bro. You are where you belong next to this rat. Toy Chica. Okay, I know how this is gonna look. I know the reputation I have. But Toy Chica is probably my favorite animatronic in this entire game. Both because of the fact that I just think her design is the most appealing out of all the FNaF 2 animatronics. I really like how she has this like super cutesy appealing design, and then she like literally mutilates her own face when she leaves the stage to have this like jack-o'-lantern-esque mouth. But also, I have a special attachment to this character now because if you watch the FNaF 1 video, you'd know that the reason why I got back into FNaF in the first place was because of seeing FNaF 2 in theaters. And if you saw that movie, you'd know that Toy Chica is like the animatronic that gets the most screen time. So I associate her very heavily with that movie and with my theater experience. So I have a very positive association with her now. So yeah, she's my favorite FNAF 2 animatronic. Mangle is S tier. Mangle, it's just such a unique idea, such a creative character design. I wish they were used a little bit better in FNAF 2 because their mechanic doesn't really do justice to how cool their design is, but I don't really care. That character is just awesome. Balloon Boy's another like B tier. A very iconic character. People really like overhate this character. I think in recent memory, like people have kind of realized that Balloon Boy is not nearly the most annoying character in FNAF 2. It's this little fucker down here. But yeah, no, he's all right. I never hated Balloon Boy. The Puppet's got to go like top of A tier. This is one of the most interesting characters in FNAF lore. Fantastic design. The music box mechanic sucks a lot and drags the character down a bit for me. But like, I find unlike Toy Bonnie, the actual character of the puppet is so interesting and so unique that I'm able to look past their shitty mechanic purely for just how much I like the actual character that is the puppet. Withered Freddy has got to be like, do I put him in S? I'll put him at top of A for now. Withered Freddy is probably like the quintessential Freddy Fazbear design. Like, when I think of Freddy, I think of Withered Freddy. The bigger, blockier proportions for him are just so good looking. I think that office render is like the most iconic render in the entire series. Like, he's just phenomenal. Withered Freddy is great. Withered Bonnie, oh my god, speaking of Peach designs, all the Withers are great designs, but Withered Bonnie has got to be like right up here. This is like one of the coolest ideas that Scott ever came up with. I don't know where he got the idea of just ripping off Bonnie's face and arm, but it led to one of the coolest designs in the entire series. I think this is the best Bonnie easily. And Withered Chica's not far off either. Like, Withered Chica is probably the scariest looking animatronic in the series for me. Withered Chica's renders scare the shit out of me. The giant gaping jaw, the friggin' wide open, like 1,000-yard stare eyes. Like, she is scary as hell on every camera render. She looks like a friggin' scarecrow. Withered Foxy, I'd say he goes in A tier alongside Withered Freddy. I don't dislike Withered Foxy. It's just I feel that Withered Freddy feels like a direct upgrade to Freddy's design, and Withered Bonnie and Chica are just peak. Withered Foxy to me always felt more like a side grade, where he looks really good, but he doesn't necessarily look better than the OG FNAF 1 Foxy to me, and I like OG FNAF 1 Foxy more. Withered Golden Freddy, back in F tier. You guys already know. You guys already know my reasoning for that. I explained in the last video. Now the shadows. Okay, this is probably gonna be my weirdest take you are ever gonna hear in one of these videos, because I feel like I have a very like passionate opinion about these two guys that a lot of other FNAF fans don't, because I think the shadow animatronics are like S tier to me. Like, I know our S tier is getting very like top heavy already. His tier list is getting very top heavy, but FNAF 2 just has a lot of peak characters. But like, the reason I like the shadows so much is it feels like these guys are what I want Golden Freddy to be. Like, I was explaining in the last video that Golden Freddy pisses me off because like, this character feels like they should be this like super mysterious Easter egg, or a character that's really simple by now in lore because of the role he plays, and yet Golden Freddy just keeps having random shit piled on top of him lore-wise by both Scott and the community. So he's this annoying character where it feels like, oh, we have to solve Golden Freddy to understand the lore, but also Golden Freddy is an unsolvable mystery. And it gets on my nerves. I feel like he's everything wrong with FNAF storytelling. These two kind of just fulfill what I want from Golden Freddy. The shadows are characters that are just relevant enough that you can't, like, you want to talk about them, but they aren't so quintessential to the lore that they need to be over-explained or have a shit ton of stuff piled on top of them. The shadows are just cool little spooky Easter eggs you can encounter in FNAF 2 that appear in other games and have something going on with them, but we don't ever really need to know what it is, so they get to have this like mystique to them, and I find them very, very interesting for that. They are probably my favorite Easter eggs in the whole series. I mean, Endoskeleton goes like C tier. It's like, I mean, it's an alright Easter egg. JJ's just like D tier or like whatever. Who I cannot find a single person. I've never met a single person who gives a shit about JJ. Probably the most like whatever Easter egg in the whole series. Paper Pals are also like, I don't know, like C tier. I think they're kind of funny. This is a dead child. How do I rank B tier? Yeah. William Afton. Okay. This guy, main villain of the series, super interesting character. But this is specifically William Afton before we get Springtrap. And to me, Springtrap is what makes William Afton so insanely cool. But William Afton himself is just a really, really interesting character. And this original, like, FNaF 2 appearance of him was spooky as hell. So I'm gonna give him, like, top of B tier. And yeah, okay, that is our animatronics tier list for FNaF 2. Like I said in the first video, feel free to flame me in the comments for putting the shadows in S tier or putting your favorite too low, or spam my comments with, oh, Pastor's a simp, this is gonna be a joke for the next 3 years because you put Toy Chica at the top. Pop off. Anyway, back to the conclusion of the video. Anyways, that'll be it for FNaF 2. What a bumpy ride revisiting this game was. To me, my experience with FNaF 2 is peaks and valleys. I love it for everything it did for my childhood and the franchise, but there are just those few parts of it that stop it from being my #1 favorite game. It has amazing art direction, story, and characters, but its gameplay drags it down in a lot of ways that make me quite frustrated. We'll just have to see how the rest of the series ends up stacking up in comparison as this series goes on. Until then, that'll be all from me for now. I hope you all enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I can't wait to see you here for my next video. Goodbye for now.